welcome to Playwright, a podcast about creating and sharing new ways to play. My name is Ryan Hamann. You can call me H.
And I'm Ryan Quintal. You can call me Q.
It's a nice little somber tone that you've taken there for our 200th episode.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe it sounded somber, but I think the tone I was trying to portray was pride, satisfaction.
That's good. It's like we're growing old. We're looking out on our legacy that we've left behind and proudly surveying our land.
Yes, all look upon me in despair, for I am Ozymandias, or we are Ozymandiases.
You can call us O for short. It's much easier to spell.
Ah, perfect.
But yeah, so this is our 200th episode of Playwright. We've almost hit every week consecutively ever since we started. We took a couple weeks here and there just because of, real life stuff that came up, but it's been a remarkably consistent podcast in terms of schedule, I hope in terms of quality. But I guess that's up to the listeners to decide. I can't posit an opinion on that one way or the other, but I've been proud of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. We just said to each other 200, right, before we started recording. And, that means it's quick math. It's not going to be perfect math, but that's roughly 600 or so ideas out there in the ether for people. Yeah,
roughly.
This episode is the day that we run up the score, isn't it?
That's right. We have something special for our 200th episode. We've done some special shows in the past. A couple years ago, we did an E3 special where we stylized our entire show like it was an E3 conference. And with E3 on again this year, and with our last show of our regular run falling on the E3 week like it normally does, maybe we do that again. Maybe we kind of brush off that idea. We'll talk about it more as we get closer to it. But this time around, we wanted to do something bigger, something crazier, something that I'm not sure is going to work entirely for our 200th show.
Yeah.
We are each going to be delivering 50 pitches, but to keep it under the traditional 16-hour mark, we are going to we're not going to spend the entire 10 minutes on each pitch like we normally would. Essentially, we're each just going to, I think the way it should work is one of us says the pithy little pitch that we've come up with. The other person kind of adds a tag to it, and then it goes back to the first person to either kind of react to that or offer a rebuttal, standard debate rules, if you will. And then the other person can go and give their next pitch. And so it'll be kind of a back and forth of ideas all night long.
Is this to say that
what
we're
the runtime of this one's going to be?
Is this to say, I imagine this was assumed, but we are going to punt our redacted game for next week. I still owe you one.
I think this will take us all the way to the end. And I mean, very fittingly, we used to end each Playwright with a mini pitch, and now we're doing 100 mini pitches in total.
Yeah.
This entire episode is like a long ending.
Yeah, in a way, it is. It makes up for all the mini pitches since we stopped doing mini pitches.
That's right, and many more hopefully. But what I'm most curious about is if any of our pitches are going to be the same.
Yes. Yeah, me too. I thought about that too. I was like, oh my God, what's the overlap going to be here?
Or if we have actually pitched any of these in the past and have forgotten.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, anyways, let's go ahead and get to it. I'll kick us off with something that I know we've pitched a similar battle royale version of this before, but I'm hoping to keep it simple with stealth golfing.
Ooh, stealth golfing. I love, we can finally have a good night golfing game here, but I love the idea of having to read terrain and stuff with specialty goggles and all that.
We'd have to really come up with what we're trying to avoid, but maybe that's a conversation for another day.
Getting noticed.
Being stealthy too. Yeah.
My first pitch on my list, number one, is a Pac-Man horror game where you're taking the perspective of being Pac-Man in the maze, being chased by these horrible ghosts.
Actually, I've also considered the opposite of, the ghosts are just kind of running around minding their own business. It's Pac-Man who has the agency and who can at any moment turn the tables on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of a hellish situation for either side.
I think if you just tweaked the graphics to look scary / real lifey, then you would get something that feels like Dead by Daylight. But I love the Pac-Man angle.
Next, manage a fireworks factory with automated construction lines. And the fun part about this would be the spectacular displays whenever something eventually goes wrong.
Oh, man. And then I love the idea of having to deal with like spilling gunpowder and like the proliferation of fires and stuff throughout the factory.
Yeah, and then you'd have the nothing to see here, please disperse.
Got to put one of those days since last incident posters on the wall. My second mini pitch is Dynasty Warriors meets Stratego. So don't just go mindlessly killing all of those guys that you see in the battlefield. One of them is the spy and can actually defeat you if you even touch them. So you have to surgically discover where the spy is.
That's interesting. It would be almost like a minesweeper type of situation, I'd imagine, where the first enemy that you attack can't be the spy, otherwise that would be unfair. But each of them give you subtle clues to maybe like what direction the spy is in or what colors the spy is wearing or something, so you can kind of pick up a general gist of it throughout the entire play field. Yeah,
I like the idea of the spy having some special type of AI so that you can kind of pick them out in a crowd if you're really careful. But hey, you've got those big swings, so you really got to figure out how to be surgical.
Next, a game that already feels kind of like you're stacking up a family of cards. It's solitaire, but it's about recreating a family tree lineage.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's a good idea. Some of these we should make real full pitches. And we'd have to, I guess, how do we do the mechanic of not being able to access cards underneath? I wonder if like children cancel out parents, or like marriages and divorces have like stacks on top of each other so people become inseparable.
Then you have that mechanic in solitaire where you can stack like the wrong color card. I don't know if it's every version of solitaire, but some versions of solitaire allow you to stack the wrong color on top of another color as long as it's kind of the next in line, but then you can't move that stack until you clear the reds from the blacks or the blacks from the reds.
Oh man.
So, just other ways of, maybe there are ways that you can kind of pin yourself down. You're not able to finish a family tree until you make some more progress in another.
Maybe some immigration or child support. Here's a weird one for you. An RPG that you play kind of robots, but it's in the 90s, and you have to load in your moves on floppy disks and unload your moves and swap them out for other floppies in the middle of battle.
I think if we're going with old technology, we should go even further and do the actual punch cards, because I've always had this like this weird fascination with the computerized punch cards that like it would be, I don't know, you would just feel like such a master of computers if you were able to like punch one out yourself, to add a couple more holes here and there. You just intuit the binary.
I love that idea. And the opportunities for naming now with punching being the main action.
Oh, yeah.
I think are really good.
All right. Lego Dark Souls. This is one that I actually want in real life.
That is a good idea. I wonder, I'm curious to find out if any of the things on your list are going to be kind of a joke pitch, but the Lego Dark Souls is so good. I love the idea of, boss battle having to, rather than having like an Estus Flex or something, go pick up your arm or something in the middle of battle.
Now I also feel like Lego is in need of maybe a bit of a
gameplay refresh.
As far as a bit of a refresh. That's a good word for it. Like when Disney Infinity moved on to his 3.0 expansion, they brought in Ninja Theory to do a like brand new combat system that gave it a lot more kind of like beat 'em up depth, drawing from their character action origins. And it would be great for Lego to kind of maybe adapt little bits and pieces from Dark Souls and then carry that forward into its future games.
Since we didn't have the burden of being business viable, I want to pitch an MMO that takes place in the Dune universe where you can play as a member of one of the houses, and the houses are competing to control the resource that is the spice.
That's something that actually feels viable. All of the Dune games that do exist are these kind of like crazy, ambitious titles. Obviously, the type of people who are going to program a Dune game in the first place. But there's a game that came out this year, I believe. Maybe it's still in early access, but I don't remember the name. But it's set in a large desert, and you navigate around in these kind of like walking tank-like things with these long spindly legs. I wish I could remember the name, but it's not coming to me at the moment. Might be an online thing as well. But yeah, deserts are a cool place for that kind of thing.
I just picked up over the weekend that Dune box set. I don't know if people have seen it, but it's a really beautifully designed set of, I guess, all the 4 or 5 Dune, but whatever it is, the 5 or 6 Dune books, I can't remember. Yeah, I think like there's also a ton, like at this point, Dune is, it's so dense and there's so much to it that there's plenty to mine for expansions and all sorts of like side stories in there.
Can be called Spice World, a traffic helicopter simulator. I don't know if that would make for a fun game. Like, I've never done it before.
I am the traffic helicopter person, or I'm like, it's like mini metros, but for helicopters.
Yeah, you're like observing the traffic below and reporting on it, I guess.
Oh, cool. That's interesting. And I like the idea of potentially maybe we go a little sci-fi or cyberpunky with it and give some sort of cool AR displays and information layers. So you get like much smaller controlled, but maybe a flight simulator like level of quality with all these cool layers on top.
It'd be neat if you had the opportunity to, if there was kind of like a Google Maps style overlay of the red roads are the ones that are super busy. And so it was kind of your job to also check if any of them don't match up, and then you can kind of manually correct them. Be like, sometimes the data is bad and a road will show as being at a complete standstill and will reroute people in some other route when it's actually a completely open road.
My next one is maybe a little bit like Lego Dark Souls. Spore Creature Creator Celebrity Deathmatch.
That's pretty fun. I mean, that's kind of what the first few evolutionary stages of a spore kind of was.
Yeah.
As you tried to consume the other people, but turning those types of generative create a character modes into like a wrestling game, I think would be a really fun way to spice up both genres.
I also like the idea of if we specifically tie it to Celebrity Deathmatch, people just being able to build and share really in the same way that we got the me universe of like celebrities and fictional characters. I would love to see the Spore universe of those characters.
I have a binocular observation game where the game's story objectives push you towards bird watching, but the achievements, which are publicly viewable and judgeable by all, quote unquote, reward you for being a peeping Tom. So we'll know which you get up to.
Oh, wow. Exposure through the achievements. Oh my God. I'm surprised more games don't do that, actually. Calling people out with achievements would be a good idea. I like the idea of, something like this. I think the Xbox does a really good job now of when you take a screenshot or when you save a video, it saves it to your phone. So I imagine you get a really cool photo mode and stuff for free with something like that.
Yeah, I can see that working out. Yeah, I think that I don't have anything else to add. Good job.
It's perfect. It is what it is. Okay. I had to burn one of my 50 pitches on this. A real damn Yoshi's Island game that is a rival to the Mario game series. Like, we just don't have this now.
I mean, Yoshi's Woolly World on Wii U is pretty good. That was a pretty solid Yoshi game from what I remember. I need to revisit
it's just
that.
a little. I'd love it to either for Yoshi to go 3D a little bit, or for Yoshi to maybe up the level. Yoshi's Island felt like a really a platformer, at least on the level of Super Mario World, in a way that it doesn't necessarily now.
Yeah. Yep. That's fair.
Calling out Nintendo with a pitch.
A Grand Theft Auto style open world crime game set in the Star Wars universe.
Ooh, okay. We almost had an adjacent pitch there. Yes, hell yes to this. That's really cool. And I love, I felt like we were moving towards that with 1313 and the early things that they were showing there. But my gosh, like let's take Mos Eisley Spaceport what are some of the bigger cities? Like, is it Coruscant? Yeah. Go to one of those places. Just let me live there. We had bring in the flying cars, all that.
I think regardless of whether the next Grand Theft Auto type game is a Star Wars property or not, like you should be able to like take out bounties as just kind of a randomly generated thing. Go and try to like hunt down people within that world. Like that would just be like a really fun thing to do, as long as they don't all have to be kind of individually scripted and programmed.
I think it would give, I know I'm breaking here, but it would give Rockstar we have 3 eras that we deal with: super future, super past, and right in between.
Yeah.
My next one is a game like Shipbreaker. Do you know Shipbreaker? Shipbreaker, but for recycling and upcycling different sorts of consumer products.
So would you be also kind of tasked with breaking them apart, or would it just be like sorting the recycling?
Yeah, I think we should break them up and potentially like see if their parts can either be recycled or maybe repurposed into something else.
All right, create a fashion line and compete in fashion shows by absorbing colors and textures from the world around you, Metal Gear Solid 4 style.
Ooh, that is a good idea. I love it. I love the idea of bringing in the Animal Crossing style or any sort of generative fashion style thing where you can kind of stitch and fuse patterns together and really come up with new combinations.
Yeah, this was kind of inspired by a fashion-centric minigame that I played recently on Wii Party U. Minigame itself wasn't that good, but it just reminded me, we don't see outside of like Style Savvy, which hasn't even had an entry on the Switch. Like we don't really see that many fashion games. It's kind of a shame.
Okay, number 8 on my list is a Minecraft/Fortnite style building/construction game where really just people are coming together to build a realistically sized and proportioned community and customize their living spaces together.
For some reason, when I hear like build a community, I immediately went to like retirement community, and I kind of like that even more as well.
Yeah, that's funny. And if you did something, but I mean, I almost imagine some version of this being like House Flipper, but you get to build the house as well. Yeah, having it take place in a retirement community, everyone's old by default. All you have to choose your old avatar. That's funny.
All right, a VR swimming game where you actually locomote by moving your arms as if you're swimming.
Hell yeah. I think this is really cool. And it starts to get into something that we've seen increasingly. I know that HTC is coming out with one of these, get into the use case of fitness in VR, right? We're getting more and more of these, like we can create the gym at home for you. And so could we create the pool? It'd be weird to say, don't get it wet. We need some waterproofing on one of these goggles.
When it comes to stuff like Subnautica that you can play in VR, it's kind of almost feels like a bit of a waste that they don't use like physical based movement. I know that your hands are used for a lot of other things in those types of games, but I mean, I think it'd be really cool to kind of scuba dive around all these like coral reefs and stuff with the fish and actual feeling of swimming.
This next one is a little too real. Plague Inc. style game where we have to vaccinate the world.
So you're kind of taking the role of the heroes against the virus this time around. That's fun. I think, I wonder if you would have that kind of like all levels of government control, or whether you would have to be kind of confined to, just like the CDC, and you have no control over the misinformation that's going out and the bad faith politicians who are, causing trouble.
I think you'd probably have to have that political layer in addition to going on the ground and even setting up some almost FTL 2D style layouts of vaccination sites to make sure that they're efficient and well run.
Next is rhythm tennis. It's already pretty rhythmic, but what can we do to kind of spice that up?
I love the idea of getting some good, I feel like even Mario Tennis, which is way out there for tennis, is still in typical-ish settings. So I like the idea of getting the disco floor, and maybe we even encourage on like downbeats or something you do want to bounce the ball on your side of the court in a way.
Yeah, the Rhythm Heaven series has had a few, I think at least 2 ping pong stylized levels, and then one very famous badminton stylized level. And just kind of the different cadences of shots. Like I think tennis makes for a really good kind of like pattern repetition, call and response, and, different audio cues for like a slow lob up that you have to wait an extra beat for, or a really quick bounce off the net or whatever.
How about a musical theater game where you have to assemble pieces to form a musical from other famous productions and sets?
So you would take like a song from Cats and set it on like a set from Les Miserables or something like that.
And then why not have a number from the producers follow it up?
I'm into that. That's a fun idea. How about Hitman, but each level is a level from another game, and you have to hunt down that game's protagonist.
We're back to stealth again. I want to hunt down Sam Fisher as Hitman. That would be very fun. Or maybe...
or Mario, or Sonic.
Or maybe one of those horrible creatures from Dark Souls.
I can go for that.
A skincare game where you have to look at, diagnose, and find the right ointments and rubs and treatments to deal with the skin conditions.
I think... Personally, I would probably pass on this one. I don't think I have the stomach for looking at infected skin and stuff like that all day.
What if we go more for a Garbage Pail Kids type aesthetic, and we make it like more Ren and Stimpy gross?
Yeah, ooziest was what I was really wanting there. How about a sumo wrestling game starring kaiju? I don't think we've had sumo wrestling video games before, and this seems like the perfect in for it.
Yeah, the rules of sumo wrestling are what? You have to kind of just push each other outside of a circle?
Yeah, and I'd really like to kind of better understand the mechanics and how they make that happen. Like, it has to be more complicated than just like pushing each other really hard,
Yeah, I imagine almost like wrestling that you would, especially if we had like, Godzilla and Mothra and that sort of stuff, it would all be all about finding like the momentum and the leverage to move another creature. So if you have like a top heavy and a bottom heavy creature, how do you properly get a hold of that thing?
Or kind of like Death Stranding, like really being careful about managing your own balance and trying to throw off the balance of your opponent.
I've got a VR game where you are a professional butcher. And so you got to butcher different types of animals. You learn how to butcher them, and then you got to do it as fast as you can.
This seems like the type of game that that would make for a last minute horrifying twist that all along you weren't who you thought you were. But maybe we leave it in a space of good faith that people just want to cut up meat, and that's fine.
I'm realizing around pitch 11 and 12 that I go on occasional dark streaks in this list of 50 things. But yeah, I do like the idea. I've seen whenever I watch a video or something of like, hey, you can buy a chicken and here's how you get like every piece of the chicken off. Like, that's wild to me. And it feels very far away from how we consume right now.
Similarly, a cooking game in which each dish comes alive after cooking and must be defeated in an RPG battle system.
Come on, did you move that to be in conjunction with this thing?
No, that was next on the list.
Well, I think we've got a complete game if we combine these two. So after you defeat it in RPG, you get to carve it all up.
I mean, if you are fighting against anything in RPGs, having a large array of knives at your disposal is going to be useful.
For sure. Here's one that I think we could have used probably about a year ago, but a game that is really about organizing and organizing in real life and giving people a virtual space with perhaps real world recreated virtual settings to remotely, peacefully demonstrate together.
That's interesting because, I mean, demonstrations are supposed to be, if you're talking about like political protests and stuff like that, are supposed to be necessarily disruptive. And so I don't know if you'd get the same level of being picked up by news media if you were just kind of all having a big protest within like rec
A
room.
virtual space, yeah.
Yeah, VR chat.
Yeah, I do think that you would have to, I think if something like this happened within a fortnight, maybe it would then catch the news
That's
because
true.
it's a big enough title. But yeah, I like the idea of kind of also using things like proximity chat and giving people, certain like bullhorns and stuff so they can be heard at different areas. But yeah, not everybody is either able to or able-bodied to go to these things. So it would be nice to give them a place to go to.
Octodad, but each leg is controlled by a separate person online.
Oh, man. Well, if we're going to do this, we got to go to the next level and have Twitch plays Octo legs,
Yeah, I just think the absolute chaos of trying to move in a single direction with 8 people all trying their best to work together, but failing would be a lot of fun.
I imagine the voice chat on that would also be good. Rock Band, but for cooking.
All right, so I'm kind of peripherally aware of a game in the, oddly enough, in the Senran Kagura series that big titty beach volleyball. They don't do volleyball, they do fighting, right? Anime fighting game.
Something.
They have a cooking game, a cooking rhythm game as a part of that series. So if you're that eager to get into the idea of a rhythm cooking game, then a
publisher's catering to you.
Pervs in I don't know what company does that. 505. That seems like something they would publish, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Have you covered?
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to have a cooking game mixed with that like stream. Like things are just coming at you. Hey, listen, the vegetables are coming on this conveyor belt. You got to chop, 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 and you got to count on the next person to toss them in the pot and salt, 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 or something like that.
How about paintball games in disruptive spaces like romantic restaurants and weddings and such?
Oh, that's really cool. And you know what? It would be so cool to do. I feel like the natural proclivity of the video game industry would be to make it lethal at these places, but the kind of equivalent of the Mafia hit. But with doing it with paintballs and making it a really ridiculous thing, have the NPC bystanders all scream and get upset and call you names.
Yeah, it's kind of the good nature, like those community episodes.
I guess we've firmly entered our multiplayer version, our part of this list. Stardew Valley community gardening online multiplayer game.
Oh, so yeah, that's interesting. So you would plant your seeds and hope that other players don't come by and steal them from you. I mean, that requires a lot of trust and a lot of people being on the same page and not wanting the quick buck, which is like the only way to play games, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I thought it would be interesting too to maybe, can you find or create the social dynamic of like, hey, I saw your things need watering, like I just took care of it, right? Or maybe somebody logs in just to run a quest and they're like, I'll do some tending to these crops.
A serious game about medical procedures in the Old West times.
You're speaking my wife's language here. She's a massive Dr. Quinn medicine woman fan, and aside from that show being like a lady doctor every single episode, there's a lot of cool because they knew so little, right? We're still in a time where there were barbers who were happily draining your blood to fix everything. How do you sanitize an instrument, right? They didn't even know about instrument sanitization. So yeah, you could create really dramatic surgeries, like ratchet the music up and everything.
We've had those trauma center games on the Wii. And since then we've had Surgeon Simulator, which is like pretty firmly tongue in cheek. But as far as other kind of like real surgical medical simulation games, nothing's really taken that space in a long while.
My next one is a wish list item, to be sure. Bring back Starfleet Command, you cowards. I want strategic starship battles. It's like naval battles, but in 3 dimensions. Let me get my firing arcs. Let me get my shields going. Let it be big, hulking, slow ships duking it out.
I've always seen these types of games, Homeworld, and I don't know if I have the right name there, but
Homeworld is one of them.
Yeah, these types of games, and I've always been extremely intimidated. Have never I've never gotten into them, but I should give them a chance. I should do my due diligence there.
I think they can be interesting because you do, if there's enough to it, you do learn a ship, and the idea of in the campaign moving on to a different ship type, especially if it's bringing in a good narrative wrapper, can be really interesting. It's like learning a new vehicle.
Manage a shopping mall by staffing each store with characters from classic literature.
Oh, that's a good idea. Man, I wonder if they're staffed with people who did their respective thing. Like, does Da Vinci run the art store? And do you get like what's his name? The guy that invented Atari to do the video gaming store and all that stuff.
I think there's some fun to be had. I mean, if that was the case, it would seem kind of like there is one solution for everything. But
yeah,
I can't help myself but put Tom Sawyer in the hardware construction store and caricatures by Dorian Gray.
Let's do Urban Outfitters with Jack Torrance as well. A battle royale set in different set with maps built on as America's national parks.
Oh, interesting. So I would like to think that the shrinking circle, we could do something more creative than like an encroaching purple storm. Maybe each of the national parks could have like an appropriate natural disaster that is happening around them. So like Yellowstone would be susceptible to giant earthquakes and bears. Yeah, certainly.
I love the idea of bears, just like a circle of bears. A lot of them are
volcanic though, and so there's plenty of opportunity there as well.
Yeah, that's cool. And learn a little bit about the world.
All right, a Tiger Electronics handhelds emulator for Switch.
Yeah. Yes. Oh man, the amount of time I spent senselessly playing what I'm sure if I went back to play it, awful Home Alone Tiger Electronics game on that thing. It's interesting, right? Because it's almost like Zen Pinball, where you'd want to simulate a bunch of the classics.
Yeah, those kind of electronic handheld devices were interesting because just due to the nature of how they worked, like everything, it was a binary display. It wasn't like a display that had moving parts. And so kind of like a Game & Watch, like every cell of animation had to exist on the screen. And, if you tilted it in the right direction, you can see them all at the same time. And they couldn't overlap. It was very, very carefully and interestingly constructed. And this reminds me of back in the day, playing Pokemon Red and Blue on Game Boy. There was a particular gym that had like a maze of invisible walls. But if you tilted the Game Boy screen, you can kind of see where the walls were.
Oh,
and
wow.
I don't know whether that was like a placebo effect type thing or whether that was just some weird way with the way that the Game Boy displayed its sprites, but like I could swear it worked.
And either the internet is about to tell you you're absolutely right or absolutely wrong on that. How about a virtual gaming space to memorialize loved ones?
So when you say a gaming space, does this mean like set up an arcade to?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like, in the same way that there's kind of What Remains of Edith Finch, could we build a Roblox or a builder type engine so people could tell stories from the lives of people that they lost?
That's a nice idea. How about a stock market simulation game influenced by the trades that others are making online, complete with news stories about what's going on in the world that this game is set within? To come at an MMO stock trading.
That's really cool, and I think we would see very quickly our friends on Reddit perhaps use this thing to model out certain real world outcomes that they might be attempting to drive. So I look forward.
Hey, power to the people.
That's right. I look forward to making the money with you, and then I will also see you in court.
I think the biggest difficulty hurdle would be, how do you make money feel worthwhile? Like, you don't want people to just like, you have to give people some kind of starter cash at the beginning of the game, and you want to encourage people to essentially gamble it, but you don't want people to either like be eliminated from play forever if they lose all their money, and you don't want people to just like treat it as being so inconsequential because they can always just get more. There has to be some sort of a balance that I'm not sure that I've found.
Yeah, maybe if you go far enough into debt, you've got to time to cough up some cash for some V-Bucks to buy back in.
And maybe it slowly regenerates over time as well.
This next one is as much a collection as it is almost a yet another remaster / reboot, but Ultimate Mortal Kombat or Mortal Kombat Ultimate or something like that. So for many sort of consoles, if you have a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X, or I think even PS4, Xbox, you don't have the first Mortal Kombat in the reboot Mortal Kombat. So this is an attempt to bundle them all together, get every character from all of those new modern reboots of Mortal Kombat, and then also a beautiful either remastered or rebuilt storyline that contains all of the information from the reboots.
Do they completely kind of upend the story and from 9 through 11 be able to tell, just one story through that? Or were they still kind of drawing upon some of the pre-established history from the previous 8 games?
9 was both a soft reboot and in a kind of meaningful reboot. So there was kind of like 9 was an attempt of like, hey, shit is so crazy, we're going back to the beginning on this. But I actually think, especially having watched that new Mortal Kombat movie, which I really didn't like, I think the Mortal Kombat reboot story, start to finish, it'd be kind of it'd be like a 30-hour campaign. It would be a pretty good one, too.
On a similar note, an Animal Crossing fighting game.
Yes. Finally, my chance to teach Tom Nook about what it means to collect debts, Tom. This is super cool, and I love the idea of if you do different sorts of arenas, the Animal Crossing island being able to be knocked off the island or destroying villages in the background that you've set up.
I've always been a bit disappointed that the Wii U or 3DS or Switch versions of Smash Bros. Didn't allow you to like import your Animal Crossing island from your save data and just like display that in the appropriate Smash Bros. Stages, because you're just flying over it. You're not interacting with it. So, why not?
Okay, this one is broad. Disney After Dark, a Disney-themed horror game.
Interesting. So we thinking like a Five Nights at Freddy's, like animatronics come alive type thing, or are you playing as like Mickey Mouse and all of these characters are like the cartoons, or what?
I think you could go either way. I like the idea of potentially having, in the same way Fantasia, it gets a little scary. You could do in fiction, there's some nasty characters, but that might go a little Kingdom Hearts on you. But I also love the idea of a horror game set trapped in, Disney World, where, the things are coming to life on the rides and all that.
You have to square off against an animatronic Abraham Lincoln eventually, which would be really exciting.
Yeah.
All right. Manage a collective of sex workers.
Man, this is an interesting one because we could really, obviously could go in very dark directions, but I think it also has an opportunity to kind of show it as maybe one of the most honest businesses that could exist.
Yeah, I think as far as like managing the different sides of the business as well, like I don't know enough about it to know whether sex workers do kind of dabble in multiple trades, like pornography and video shoots and actual like real life prostitution and escorting and all these different kind of trades, or whether they tend to be kind of like separate. But it'd be interesting to kind of have to be able to kind of weigh up the risks and benefits of each and kind of manage your company of workers and kind of advise as to how they can make the most success for themselves.
How about an open globe, or not even an open world, an open globe Splinter Cell sequel where terror is happening real time all around the world, and you as Sam Fisher have to choose where you're going to drop in and sort of disrupt the engagements.
Holy cow. I mean, the ambition of building something to that scale be really impressive, but I would love it if much of the game was a kind of international Carmen Sandiego style intel hunt throughout the world.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Hey, Ubisoft, bring back Splinter Cell, please.
Right. You are a talent agent that represents the letters of the alphabet. Make sure to keep all 26 clients happy. Maybe get them like letter of the day on Sesame Street or something like that.
Gosh, we have to have some sort of shout out to Jerry Maguire and do some kind of phone call conversation system in this thing.
Yeah, and you'd have to consider, which letters are more common or more popular in different regions as well. I think England gets more use out of its U's than we do in the United States. We drop a lot of them from color and favorite and words like that.
Despite them. Minecraft kart racers. So build your own vehicle with Minecraft blocks. Heck, design your own courses in a multiplayer kart racer.
I like it. It's kind of a competitive nuts and bolts in a way. Right, you are sentient mold in the kitchen. In fact, more food and crawl to darker places to grow.
Oh my God. At pitch 40 something, I almost wrote this down and I was like, no, I will be chastised for talking about growing mold. Yeah, I love the idea. And I like the idea too of the mold having to get to certain sizes to kind of leap to the next adjacent vegetable.
Wonder if there's an element of trying to remain hidden as well so you don't get thrown out.
Just trying to grow on the undersides. Speaking of decay and grossness, why don't we play a game as a herd of maggots like the Wonderful 101 trying to break down an animal body?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's pretty gross. I'll give you that one. I'm surprised though we haven't had any serious overlap so far. So let's see if we can keep it up in the second half here. Okay, you can stop crimes as a superhero, but your superpowers change every 30 seconds.
Stop crime as a superhero, but your powers change every 30 seconds. Oh, okay. So this is like your everything man or everything woman, and everything is just rotating around. I like the idea of encountering certain bad guys that are of a certain type, where if you can stall to get the particular power, you could defeat them.
Yeah, I think locking everything behind these like very specific, Lego game kind of power matchup type of things might be a little bit frustrating, but I would like to, encourage the creativity while keeping you on your toes of never really knowing what your character is capable of at any moment.
What about an asymmetrical monster hunter game inspired by Evolve, where one player gets to be the monster?
That feels like the next logical step for the next Monster Hunter game. I can imagine that as being like, the box feature.
Yeah, we've already got monster riding. Why not be the monster?
So you manage a circle in hell. Find appropriately ironic ways to punish all wayward souls.
Oh man, you almost want to have like this is torture Wheel of Fortune or something like that.
Yeah, a Wheel of Misfortune. I think some games have kind of dabbled in hell humor before, but it's not nearly as common as it should be.
I would like it if it's mundane in the torture. This next one is courtesy of Jessica. So Jessica says hi, by the way. I'll just say what she wrote. You work at a hot dog factory and have to make the hot dogs. It's a thankless job, but somebody's got to do it.
I would love if you have to be creative with the types of meats that you're throwing in there. Like you don't have enough pigs to make all of the hot dogs that you want. So anything you can find goes in the grinder.
That's right.
Red light, green light, but in VR.
Oh, cool. I like the idea of having to, like the swimming game, swing your arms to run too.
You're dangerous.
A bodybuilding mini games with, of course, coaching from Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Would this be current day Arnold Schwarzenegger who you have to distract from his governmental duties?
I think if we do more of a, anime aesthetic on the whole thing, then we could get a anime prime Mr. Universe Schwarzenegger.
You run an overpopulated graveyard. Find creative ways to stack bones underground so that everyone fits.
This is terrible. Truly awful, and I think you're going to have to level up and earn the ability to make some of those sarcophaguses above ground as well.
As long as you don't have any like arms or heads poking up out of the ground.
Yeah, this is a dense dirt. A firefighter game where you're actually doing climbing puzzles to rescue cats.
Oh, that's interesting. So you have your ladder. Maybe you choose your kind of equipment set like Death Stranding to determine what you carry on you. You never know what you need, but there's always a way to get to where you need to be. It's just, it could be a little bit more or less difficult.
And take the wrong path or try and reach for the cat too soon, and it'll go further up the tree.
You are a salmon that must migrate upstream and navigate dams and such.
Oh, man. Obviously, some dangers as we get to the last stretch of the salmon run, from hooks and fishing nets and all sorts of obstacles.
Yeah, I was very interested in the way that Maneater controlled the game where you play a giant shark.
Yeah.
And I think, applying that same kind of movement set to something that is like prey rather than a predator, something that's running away from things, would be interesting and frantic.
How about a 4-player game where each player gets to have a quarter of a planet, and you're doing city building, development, civilization development, but everybody kind of, based on where they start, their civilization is going to develop in a different way.
It'd be interesting if it didn't all kind of naturally progress towards war, like these types of like RTS games and civilization games naturally do.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Right, a point-and-click adventure rhythm game.
That doesn't exist. That one seems obvious to me. Like they should do that. I do like the idea of the point and click adventure game, and then also being able when you're idling or something, that the characters got all sorts of sick dance moves that they know.
Point and clicks are a genre that require a lot of like waiting around or thinking or standing in place and observing the surroundings. If there was a way to really kind of pick up the pace and make it a little bit more, The Cave, published by Double Fine. Ron Gilbert kind of boiled down a lot of those point and click elements to a pretty standard puzzle platformer type of game. And so, I think we could streamline to such a degree that it can be done to a beat and a rhythm.
For sure. How about a game where it's set in Pompeii? It's the end of civilization. You're there to live your best life and the remaining days, weeks, whatever are left, and maybe help as many people as you can.
I think it'd be fun if it was set in Pompeii and you weren't trying to help anyone. You were just trying to amass like the goofiest scene that you could be frozen in forever. And like whoever gets like the funniest scenario
set up the situation
would be the winner.
Yeah, let's make the graphics highly let's get those PlayStation 5 like cinematic quality graphics on it too.
Kirby Bowling. Absorb different elemental powers as you go down the bowling lanes to clear obstacles and have different effects on the pins.
That's really cool. I love the idea too. No Kirby game has dealt with this because it hasn't really been physicsy 3D-ish. But I would guess based on some of the things that Kirby swallows, he might be a little lopsided, so that could affect your curve and all of that sort of stuff. An Apocalypse Now inspired game where it's the Vietnam War. You're on a little boat going up river, and you've got to stop for supplies to survive, defend you and your team from attacks, all that stuff.
This would be a nice, almost kind of distillation of 80 Days, kind of a choose your own adventure style narrative adventure game with kind of meaningful choices along the way and ability to engage with different cultures and peoples. This feels like something that's attainable and realistic.
I think the way it either becomes directly involved with Apocalypse Now or not is how psychedelic and narrative you want to make the ending.
So a game like Splatoon, but you cause the stage to disappear instead of it being covered in ink. So the stage is naturally kind of constantly shrinking because it keeps on being eaten away.
Oh man, that makes me think of, was it last week that you talked about the sequel to Dig Dug, where you're carving away pieces of the island? So yeah, I love that. And I even like the idea of maybe being able to use your ink or something to buy a couple extra seconds platform or extend the world a little bit off the edge as you are competing to stay alive.
Maybe there would be different types of stages, like ones where gravity affects the stage, and if you slice off entire sections, then they'll fall into the ocean. And maybe there's some where gravity doesn't affect it, and so you're trying to create like holes in the stage, but if there's still a little bit of stage remaining, then you can kind of jump to that to try to get to safety.
How about a Flappy Bird escort platformer where you're playing as bees trying to defend their queen?
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot to that. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. So how would you protect, would you throw yourself in the way of enemy projectiles or whatever? Like, how do you protect people in like a side-on Flappy Bird style game?
Yeah, I'm thinking that maybe the queen gets a few bees surrounding her, and those also can kind of represent your lives. But as you kind of buzz around, maybe we make it so when you fall, you kind of fall stinger side down, so you can really kind of, as long as you fall appropriately, you'll defeat people.
It's a good idea. A word game controlled with an actual Ouija board.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I think we're living in the land too where it would be probably pretty affordable to slap like an NFC sticker on the Ouija puck and actually get something that could do that with a phone pretty quickly. Yeah, the Ouija board also as an interface harkens back to my first design program I ever used, Mario Paint. So I would like to see cool. I think you could do cool rhythm.
I think you're thinking of a Luigi board.
That's right. Yeah, and I like the idea of doing rhythm-based stuff with the word game too.
Yeah, I think the challenge would be spectral interference, which is really hard to program around.
What about a yard sale tower defense game? You have to successfully guide people with your crappy signs to spend money at your yard sale.
Maybe there's a level of there are certain collector items, and you want them to be noticed by the affluent collectors, but you don't want the kids getting their grubby hands on them. So you have to like set up either distractions or like attacks or turrets or whatever to keep the kids stands away.
Yeah, I like that. And then why don't we have some fragile, breakable items that if too many people pass by them without buying it, then they shatter and you just lose that income.
Record a series of team sport movements or plays, and those recorded movements are applied to all kinds of different sports, and you just see how many result in successful goals.
That's interesting. One of the things that I know they do, or the sports networks love to do, even though it kind of makes no sense, is they calculate the size and mass of a football and the speed at which a quarterback's able to throw it. And they were like, that's technically a 102 mile per hour fastball and that sort of thing, which it probably would not work like that in real life. But yeah, I do like the idea of taking those movements, or maybe people with those stats, and seeing how they plug into what does a linebacker do when it's their movements are put on the ice in hockey.
Yeah, I don't know how many sports have the same number of players on each side, so I don't know how feasible it would be, but maybe if you were controlling one character and then the rest of the team kind of all intelligently kind of followed your lead.
It also could be like really bad chess, but for sports.
Yeah.
How about an art? I feel like this is kind of like one of yours. An art curator has to battle horrible creations from the paintings of famous artists.
I like that. I might have something similar later on. I'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think it would be really fun to go up against the Scream and the Mona Lisa and all of these kind of great, paintings and
the
see them from an entirely different angle. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And I also think that some of the abstract stuff could end up giving you big Dark Souls energy.
A snowboarding type game where you're the size of a bug surfing on a leaf down giant scale household objects.
That's cool. And it actually reminds me of something that they should probably one day get around to adding to that Grounded game that is out. But yeah, I think that's super neat. And then you could do in the same way you do in like snowboarding games did not quite get to the point where we were doing heavy weather effects and that sort of stuff. But I can imagine you do some rain or things like that and really affect the gameplay.
It makes me think of that Disney Tony Hawk's Pro Skater spinoff where you got to play as like the Toy Story characters and skate around Andy's room.
Oh, yeah. How about a trick or treat battle royale where you're competing to get the most candy and you can also steal candy from other players?
This feels like something that they must have considered in Costume Quest, but didn't go through with. Like the systems to acquire candy in that game are like there, but they just don't really do anything interesting with them.
Yeah, I can imagine if it's team-based as well, then you could get fun costume-aligned squads and have the ghosts are down, the Freddies are down, go get all their candy.
A competitive rocket building game. Whoever gets off the ground of a small planet first using the limited items that they find laying around wins.
Oh, that's cool. And are you going for a little physicsy as well? Like you've got to kind of launch it and maintain it?
Yeah, I think you would, and maybe even be able to sabotage each other's rockets or steal parts.
Or just break apart maybe that's available to everyone and really ruin people's day. Now you have the monopoly. This one is after both of our hearts. A Gex sequel where he's we're moving through the streaming universe we're now in.
So how would that differ from the media dimension beforehand?
I think it would be similar, but I do love the idea of splat, not only doing some of the properties from each of these streaming services, but slathering the streaming service branding all over everything so he can make jokes about the, oh, I can't watch that over here sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it would be called Gexflix or Netflix. I don't know.
That's it. You found it.
Each player designs a puppet and tries to scare the other player with it. And each player has heart rate monitors on.
I don't have anything to say to this other than fuck yeah. Yeah, let's borrow the Little Big Planet tech or the Dreams tech to make this happen.
Yeah, great. Let's scare some people.
How about a deck building 2D Zelda where you defeat enemies to collect cards and cards grant temporary breakable items or timed power-ups?
So how is this different from like most card-based dueling type of games? Is it like an actual, like a Zelda-like, move around the world, or is Zelda just kind of...
I'm thinking it's kind of a Link to the Past style, and you use your cards in it, and the cards almost bring in that kind of everybody's favorite mechanic from Breath of the Wild, breakable items sort of thing going on.
All right, tilt your Switch to guide a marble through a maze.
Hell yes. I think we've talked about different Marble Zone things in the past, and yeah, there's an accelerometer, right? Or a gyroscope inside that right Joy-Con, so let's do this thing.
Yeah, they haven't done nearly enough of, I used to love Mercury Meltdown on Wii. We just haven't really seen that level of like tilt style games on the Switch yet, which is kind of a shame.
Yeah, we have a free Super Monkey Ball interface already built into the Switch, and they haven't made another one.
They've just revived the worst one.
How about an adventure game where you play as a genie who is in search of their magic lamp?
I've always been very interested in like writing a sketch or something that has to do with like a genie academy where all of the genies in training are like learning how to provide appropriately ironic, spiteful, like answers to the wishes that people give them. And so, some of them go way overboard and do things that are way too harsh. And some of them just kind of punish people that it's not like poetically tied to what they wished for. And they, so they're all there to learn.
Yeah, I like the idea of it being a little scribble Nazi and that people request things of you and you can kind of poof them to life in that tragic way.
A Spider-Man sequel set in the jungles of South America.
Oh, that's, first of all, great swinging action that we'll get.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think it would be really cool to have Spider-Man kind of engage more in, or just as much in the sort of crawling and the interesting things you could do with webs in between trees and all that stuff.
He might have to pick different colors for his outfit, though, unless he wants to
really
telegraph that he's poisonous.
Congratulations, H, we did it. I have got for you a Venom game from Insomniac where Spider-Man is stalking you like Mr. X in Resident Evil.
Oh, interesting. So you are kind of the big bad monster, and the traditional hero character, the one who's a little bit more kind of nimble and dynamic, is the one chasing you around.
Yeah, that's right. And he's fast. He can get you, and maybe it's everything between being a nuisance and being a serious disruptor to your agenda.
Right, a game starring a kid set in a museum with Assassin's Creed-like climbing and parkour.
Super cool. I feel like this, I'd be surprised if Assassin's Creed doesn't end up doing this at some point, right? Like put a kid in the Animus and the kid can, an Assassin's Creed game that's almost like Assassin's Creed Tapas or something.
I mean, they are doing those, Mr. No books right now or whatever, children's books based in the Assassin's Creed universe, weirdly enough. But I've always wanted to run up the dinosaur skeletons and the giant whale that's in the London Museum of History. Yeah.
I agree. This is kind of maybe a Forza Horizon expansion, but a racing game on a mid-terraformed planet where your weather conditions are just changing wildly from moment to moment.
Oh, very cool. It's kind of like a split second in that way where things can go disastrously wrong. There's a game called Motorstorm Apocalypse. Is that the one? It's an ATV racing game
familiar.
With like extremely exaggerated and hyped up like natural geysers and oil slicks, and you have to keep your bike cool by driving through water and stuff like that. And it's I haven't spent enough time with it. It came out late enough in the PS3 generation that I was kind of like on to PS4 by the time I picked it up, played a couple sessions, never really went back to it. Yeah, I know. But I should go back to it at some point. It sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I think I heard about that. It's a shame I never checked it out.
Right. Adjust coolants and water pressure in a nuclear plant to keep things stable.
A lot of this gives me anxiety as somebody who watched and thoroughly enjoyed the HBO miniseries Chernobyl.
Yeah.
But I like that, and it's kind of codifying. You could, with enough extra stuff around it, build out a full game around all of those Resident Evil style mini games of balance the fluids and move the containers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, as a simulator, it might seem a little boring. Maybe I don't know that much about nuclear coolants and stuff like that. All I really know is like how not to do it by watching The Simpsons, but it could be interesting.
How about a Hitman meets Ocean's 11? So we're infiltrating and stealing from casinos with potentially a group of accomplices.
Yes. One of our earliest pitches kind of dabbled in this. I really want there to be a like prolonged period of player guided like intel gathering that you can choose to cut off at any point when the heist needs to happen.
Yeah, with appropriately ridiculous names. This is Frankie Snakes. Frankie kisses his wife every morning at 8 a.m.
Right, a tightrope walking game in VR.
Oh, man. As somebody who played and really enjoyed The Climb, which I know there's a sequel to now, I imagine this would be absolutely nerve-wracking. I think the thing you'd have to solve, right, is the age-old problem of, I would imagine, like I'm thinking one foot in front of the other, but I will run out of VR space. So do I have to kind of turn around or reset in some way to keep going?
I played a lot of The Climb 1, especially on Oculus Rift. And I got to the point where like the heights didn't really scare me anymore. Like I mastered the simulation and I was able to just kind of monkey around those courses. But I went to The Climb 2, and even though the graphics are a pretty steep drop off from the first game because it's Quest exclusive, playing in the city level really kind of brought that fear back. I think because it felt more like relatable and like places I had actually been.
Yeah, your mind understood nature. The scale.
Yeah. So yeah, it's scary stuff.
Yeah, The Climb's so good. Smash TV reimagined as a 16-bit style Hades roguelike.
Smash TV. Okay. Yeah.
So I'd like to keep it 2D, but I'm thinking that we go we go more Hades room by room generative power-up sort of stuff.
I think it would play nicely with a really expressive power set, and the way that Smash TV kind of differentiates itself from Hades is that it's kind of wave-based. You know, the characters come to you rather than you progressing through a dungeon. It's all like you could really play up this kind of like grimy 80s television show, you know, this Videodrome type of aesthetic as well.
I was thinking the same thing in that, like, largely, I know Cyberpunk weirdly kind of went in a, I feel, sleeker direction than I was hoping for, with more dirty 80s RoboCop-ism.
Yeah. All right. You are a paintball sniper that must deface famous paintings at an art exhibit from afar.
I think you get bonus points if you can pull off certain tricks, like if you can successfully mustachio the Mona Lisa. Then bonus points to you. But I love the idea of trying to ruin a painting, and trying to ruin a painting in just the right way. Like, what is the most valuable spot? I guess it's the mouth and the scream. That would be the place you want to hit.
I just really love the concept of like that slow motion follow the bullet mode from Sniper Elite, and watching all these kind of stuffy aristocrats gasp and fan themselves with their little paper fans as the as the ball explodes on this priceless work of art.
I like the idea of having a round that maybe doesn't shoot any paint, but kind of just disrupts the patrons as well in case you need a clean shot.
Like a fart bomb or something, stink bomb.
Yeah, this one's actually maybe a little bit adjacent to your Spider-Man pitch. A game where you're playing a panda in kind of a bamboo kingdom, and you're playing this panda whose parents were captured, and the movement, combat, mobility takes place entirely in tree lines.
Yeah, very interesting. So would you be kind of a realistic panda that can do what a regular panda can do, or would you be like a kung fu panda?
What's his name? Gru? No, he's not Gru. I don't know. My God.
I don't remember. Sorry.
Jack Black. I like either. It might, maybe more animated would be potentially more appealing, but I do like the idea of trying to do a bit of a Pixar-esque level story to this, have some sort of set pieces and emotional beats.
All right, a Teletubbies wrestling game. They just have such like big squishy bodies that like it'd just be so much fun to just like body slam and pile drive each of them.
What you're saying is the way they're dressing, they're asking for the Teletubbies.
Maybe, I don't know.
I love the idea of that. Of course, we get the big open field with the sun baby kind of staring down at the Teletubbies, and maybe the sun baby is the announcer, right? We fight, finish
him.
In the narrative action genre, I've got the movie Logan was quite good. I'd love to play Wolverine as Old Man Logan in the Last of Us style narrative action game.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if you can really easily transition into this like stylized Devil May Cry Bayonetta style character action, like, because he's still the Wolverine, he can still kick ass anytime he wants to, but like you have strong incentives to not draw attention to yourself.
Yeah, some perfect combo of slipping under the radar but going into that Wolverine rage mode, and the power arc would be very different, right? Like he is literally losing it over the course of it rather than building up.
So how about a game based on actual real-world treasures that have been found? Follow clues to discover where these ancient treasures were.
Somebody call Nicolas Cage. Why these things belong in a museum? I think that's cool. I love the idea, too, of being able to go to different historical places, find out the origin of these things, maybe even uncover secrets about them that maybe are learnable in a history book, but don't necessarily try and attempt to totally fantasize in the way that the National Treasure movies might.
Yeah, I think there's so much interesting historical information that can be taught to people in really compelling ways through games. Like, why not?
I've got this a shooter. This is actually based on a Twitter video I saw. A shooter that progresses through every era of shooter styles with each level.
Oh, that's great. We've seen games like, I don't remember the names, but there's like at least
DLC
one or two
Quest.
RPGs. Yeah, that's a good one as well. There's at least a couple RPGs that kind of go from like, 8-bit to 16-bit to 32-bit to 64-bit 3D style RPGs. But like, obviously the gameplay is remaining fairly consistent because that genre doesn't change that much based on the way that you dress it up. Whereas shooters, I could really see changing in, form and function throughout. It could be really interesting.
Yeah, and I like the idea of building a modern shooter level at the level of fidelity is super expensive now, but could an engine recreate everything from the original Doom all the way up into, your AAA action shooter of today?
All right, so Banjo and Kazooie are separated. Banjo can put enemies in his backpack to use some of their powers, and Kazooie can fly freely on her own, each working towards each other through a series of levels before meeting in the middle and having to cover the ground that they each pass through separately as the iconic pair together.
Super smart, super good, and to me, it's really about length management here, as long as you don't make... I think you want the moment where they come together. It has to be a 1 + 1 makes 3 type of feeling, right? Where it's just like, this is the moveset I've been waiting for. It's got to be the God of War goes there, or Kratos goes to get his chains moment, right?
Yeah, this and then going through the stages that you've been through before, being able to get through new routes that you weren't able to access and unlocking all those secrets that you saw tucked just outside of view would be a really rewarding way to spend that second half of the game.
Bring back Banjo-Kazooie. I don't know why I'm requesting this, because I know I'm not going to like half of this game, but a Persona style game, but instead of going into dungeon crawling in your spare time, you're actually getting into mechs and having killer anime mech combat.
There was a game last year called 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim or something like that. It was kind of a mech-based RPG system, except the mech battles weren't these kind of like big fist throwing and rocket launching types of battles. They were all kind of like zoomed out tactical views of maps. And I think it left some people feeling a little underwhelmed based on the spectacle they were expecting. But I think that one, the story was carrying most of the weight anyways.
Yeah, it's like, and I a shame I didn't get to play it because I didn't have the platform to play it on. But after having watched things like Evangelion over the past year and a half, I'm like, oh, okay, well, there can be a story alongside mech combat and make it all work.
You are operating a lawnmower in a haunted cemetery. Keep the grass looking nice while avoiding ghosts and zombies.
I feel like this has weird synergy with your wanting to pack the ground with bones in one of your earlier
That's
pitches.
right. It could be kind of a asynchronous multiplayer.
That's right. So also be wary of all the things sticking up from the ground potentially from your previous game.
Uneven land.
Yeah, I like this. And you know what? Why can't a cemetery look beautiful? Like it has a need.
Yeah, they do have groundskeepers and they do try to make them, look nice because a lot of people visit and it's respectful. But you can imagine spending that much time around a graveyard, it's going to do things to you eventually.
Oh, so maybe the ghosts aren't really there. Maybe there's some psychological stuff going on.
Maybe.
I want to play a game as a fly who I almost wrote needs to regurgitate, but I didn't, who needs to kill and consume to stay alive as their health is always draining.
Interesting. We had those games on the PlayStation 2 where you played as a mosquito and had to discreetly drink the blood of this family whose house you lived in. I think a mosquito's works really well because you have that natural risk reward of going and trying to land on a living being who doesn't want you there to drink their blood. And it's a very obvious, what they drink and where to get it. It's a natural human thing. Whereas flies feel a little bit more like, are they like goats? Do they just eat anything? What do they want? Where do we get it? What is the risk involved?
Damn flies on my tin cans. No, I like the pivot to mosquito there. And I do love, I don't know if that game did this, but the kind of, the risky, that kind of scary feeling of how long can I maintain bringing my health back before I get crushed?
Yeah. A simulation showing how the COVID vaccine was developed.
Oh, cool. I had a nurse explain to me this when I was getting the shot. She said, it's kind of like saying your body needs chocolate chip cookies and the vaccine is giving you eggs, flour, chocolate chips, sugar, brown sugar, and butter, but it's not putting chocolate chip cookies in you. And I thought that was an interesting explanation. I don't know how scientifically accurate it is, but I do like the idea of seeing the building blocks come together.
And I mean, hopefully it would give the other nations all of the information that they need to develop these vaccines and break these damn patents.
Number 48, I have a chess puzzle game where you're on a timer and you have to quickly decide which two pieces of yours on the board need to be swapped to win.
Oh, so is this kind of like a really bad chess setup where they kind of put you in a game mid-game and you have to kind of work out the next 2 or 3 moves?
Yeah, I like the idea of that, but it's like two key pieces on this board need to be swapped 1 for 1 to win in the next, 2 moves or something like that.
You are a mech who has to fight larger and larger kaiju. With each one you fight, you can cut off one body part or weapon and attach it to yourself, so you can either choose to grow in size to match the increasingly large kaiju, or do you go for more dangerous blades and beams?
I love that we have so many pitches that are synergistic with each other. Now we can add that combat layer into the narrative of the people offline, sure. And we've got a real full anime-ass mech game on our hands here.
Yeah, I just love the balance of either just bulking up in a way that isn't necessarily going to help you, but it's at least going to let you not get battered around so much, or to specialize in weapons but remain like really small and scrappy and really kind of take some risks and, eventually feels kind of Shadow of the Colossus like.
I wonder if that's something they could end up doing with Metal Gear without Kojima being involved, if that ever continued.
Yeah, it could be.
I've got one here that's Mist Collapse. So you're escaping from the island of Mist, and if you take too long to solve a puzzle, the island is collapsing and you're forced to, it maybe breaks down and you pass through the area anyway and you're forced to move on to the next puzzle.
It's interesting. I think people know the Mist Island fairly well by now, just due to the number of, obviously it was a very popular game when it launched. I think people have a lot of nostalgia for that, and then a number of re-releases along the way. It would be fun to utilize that space for something else. Like, I'm kind of surprised it hasn't become like a limited time Fortnite map or a Smash Bros map or something by now. Like, it's such an iconic space.
Oh God, a building and shooting on Mist Island is, I don't know, I guess it's as bad as the xenomorph dancing, so I'm down with it. An open world game inspired by Little Shop of Horrors where you have to defend a city from killer succulents.
All right, so you could use poisons and fires, all very, useful against plants and stuff like that. Maybe also finding ways to, I guess, keep them from putting in their roots anywhere.
Yeah, I like that. And I do like, I always love it when a game, especially open world games, which can feel sometimes, I'm playing Assassin's Creed and it's just so samey. Every time I go back to it every couple weeks and I'm like, oh my God, everything looks the same to me in this game. Having really clear indicators when you turn a corner in a city block and you see, blooms and spikes and stuff all over the place, that you've got work to do.
Space billiards with each ball behaving like it would in a zero gravity situation.
Oh, that's interesting. I feel like we need wider tipped pool cues or something, or like more rounded tip pool cues, so that we ensure that we can kind of get things directionally going up and down as well.
I think if there's no friction that causes them to naturally stop, it almost becomes like a game of, timing and rushing to beat the clock before the opponent's balls eventually get in all of the holes. Yeah,
as long as, or it's like two players going in real time, so that you're kind of playing defense along with it. All right, did we do it? Are we at 50?
This is our 50th. I think we each have one more.
Here's how I'm going to end. I don't know if it's the strongest, but here's how I'm going to end. A Bejeweled RPG. You play as the Jewel Warriors, and your RPG is that classic Bejeweled Match 3 puzzle combat.
Bejeweled 3 did have kind of a quest mode or a story mode or something where, there wasn't a story to be had, but there were different types of challenges that you would be faced with along the way, and then you would have to beat a certain number of them to progress to the next round, the next page of challenges.
Yeah.
And it did show off that even within that system, there's a lot of different types of gameplay opportunities to be had.
And I love the idea of, learning from the puzzle fighters of the world and saying, okay, if you can do a match 3, 4, or 5 of the blues, for example, maybe you get a water attack or something like that.
And my number 50, again, maybe a bit of an anticlimax, but that's where I was at the end of my list. A competitive block building game to recreate shapes or famous buildings.
Oh, interesting. So, oh man, I'm tempted to also place this in VR because I love the idea of scrambling and actually putting things together, stacking them and having them be structurally sound, not toppling and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think balance challenges are really compelling in games, and would love to find more ways to, we had a nice little run of them on Wii U and 3DS when stylus guided touchscreens were very popular and you can get that level of precision, but haven't had anything for a while to my knowledge.
Yeah, and I think you'd want to do what some restaurants do too, which is just put a reference photo right there in front of each person who's competing. Yeah. And even then you don't necessarily have to do famous buildings. You could just be hey, here's the shape that you're trying to make, and the timer begins.
Well, that takes us through our 50 games.
Holy
we get everything
cannoli.
From your side as well.
We did, and I can't believe it. I thought, like you said, around pitch 37, I was for sure there is nothing left in my brain.
Well, it's, I did all of these. I wrote all of these between yesterday and today. Obviously, we've been at this for 4 years now, just about. We're 200 episodes in. I think if this little Sisyphean task today has shown people anything, it's that really there is no limit to the ideas that you can come up with. Sit down and just force yourself to think for a little bit, and you're going to come up with so much stuff that you're going to be impressed in yourself.
And I think, I know it's not the last episode of the show, but there was something to this. Just being in this moment right now with you, I have this feeling of, were we able to do this because of the 200 rounds of batting practice that we got of how many weeks did we go into an episode, maybe not knowing an hour before the episode what the hell we were going to talk about. And I know I've certainly done that. I know sometimes I know at least once that you did it moments before the show because you're so good at it. But kind of just a reminder to me of how fun it's been to talk about these ideas and share them together over these past, 4 years now.
To all the listeners, obviously, you don't have a seat on this podcast and can't necessarily pitch through all these ideas with us, although we do enjoy the listener correspondences every week. But, I think there's something different about having, a partner in podcasting that we can reliably go to every week, even when we're not feeling good about an idea, and just have that faith that what, between the two of us, we'll be able to get this somewhere. And so even if I come in with a weak assortment of words, we'll be able to sculpt that into something meaningful and worthwhile by the end of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when we started this thing, I think I remember being, bearish, I think is the term. I was we're going to get people, are we really going to get anybody to write in this thing? And, while we have our stretches of dipping into our mailbag or Reddit, I have been amazed with, Spencer and Ashton, and it's so many people who have not only wrote in multiple times with ideas. It's so great.
Yeah. Whenever we populate a new set of episode descriptions, I leave Micah Squara's name in the template just because more often than not, the guy's got a lot of ideas. What can I say? We are happy to receive all of them. And it's great to have those repeat write-ins. And it's also great to have people that we hear from once and never again. Hopefully not because they're dissatisfied with what we did, but just because maybe that was the idea that they've had ever since they were a little kid. And they just, and I think it's great if you just have like, the one that you've been thinking about for years and waiting on. And it's totally fine if you have different ideas every day and don't think back on any of the previous ones. I think there's, value in both of them.
I am on pins and needles to find out in the next, whatever, 6, 8, however many weeks, if Wigglin' Joe makes a return. That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah. So as we've said before, we have kind of a limited run before we close down here on Playwright, at least for our regular rotation, leaving the door open for specials. And whenever we get kind of a itchy creative finger, then we can hop back on the old podcast. But we're going to be kind of winding things down in June. So let's make the most of the time that we have left. And if that makes you at all sad or upset that Playwright isn't going to be continually producing new episodes, then please do just start again from the beginning. Like there's so much stuff and it's been 4 years since we released it. Like I'm sure it's going to land on fresh ears.
Or I guess if you want now, you can actually just play this episode and just after each 2 pitches.
Play in slow motion, make it last.
That's right. Just pause for a week between every 2 pitches and know that we've given you a year.
That's right. Well, anyways, this has been a lot of fun. If you would like to submit a pitch for one of the remaining Playwright episodes, and I think we've proven today that it can literally be anything, then email us playwrightcast@gmail.com, go to our website playwrightcast.com/pitch, or tweet us at playwrightcast.
Special thank you to PROTODOME for the use of our theme song Hello World off the album Blue Noise, and thank you to the Cane and Rinse Podcast Network with Cane and Rinse, with Sound of Play, with The Sausage Factory. Go check it all out at caneandrinse.com.
And I think we've delivered enough mini pitches for the day, and I don't think we have the energy left in our our brains to play any redacted games, so we might just leave you there. But thank you everyone for joining us on our 200th show, and we hope to hear from all of you again with your video game pitches, ideas by the time we wrap in June.
Hey H, happy 200. Bye.